Blood stained the pristine snow, each crimson drop telling a story of desperation. For Sarah, the German Shepherd mother, this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about keeping a promise she'd made to her dying mate. The wind howled through the abandoned industrial district, its icy fingers clawing at the weathered buildings. Sarah's paws trembled with exhaustion as she navigated through the maze of forgotten warehouses, her two tiny pups tucked beneath her. Belly, the bullet wound in her shoulder, throbbed with each step, leaving a trail of scarlet droplets in the fresh snow. Behind her, distant shouts and the bark of another dog echoed off the metal walls. They were getting closer. Sarah's heart raced as she remembered Max's last words, before he'd created the diversion that allowed her to escape with their pups. "Find the old factory with the red door. Marcus is there. He'll help you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." But in this labyrinth of identical structures, everything looked the same under the heavy snowfall. Her vision blurred from blood loss, and her legs threatened to give out. The pups whimpered softly, their tiny bodies shivering against her. They were too young for this, barely a week old, their eyes not yet open to the cruel world they'd been born into. A sudden gust of wind parted the curtain of snow, revealing a flash of red in the distance. Sarah's ears perked up, hope flickering. In her amber eyes, the red door, it had to be. Gathering what little strength remained, she pressed forward, her maternal instinct driving her beyond the limits of her failing body. The shouts grew closer, accompanied by the crunch of boots on snow. "Check the alley. The blood trail leads. This way." The voice was harsh, belonging to one of the men who'd raided their hideout. The same men who'd shot Max, who'd tried to take their pups. Sarah reached the red door, her heart sinking as she found it locked. Inside, a light burned dimly, but the windows were too high for her to reach. Desperation clawed at her chest as she heard the footsteps approaching. With no other choice, she began scratching at the door, her claws leaving desperate marks on the metal. "Please," she whined, though she knew humans couldn't understand her words. "My pups, they'll die out here." The sound of a chair scraping inside gave her hope, but the footsteps behind her were almost upon them now. Sarah made a decision. She quickly nudged her pups into a small alcove beside the door, using her body to shield them from both the bitter cold and any watching eyes. If this was to be her last stand, she would face it protecting her children. The red door creaked open, spilling warm light onto the snow. A man appeared, his silhouette backlit by the glow from inside. Sarah looked up at him, her body trembling. From cold and fear, blood still seeping from her wound. In his eyes, she saw the moment that would define not just her fate, but that of her pups. Time seemed to freeze as Marcus, if this was indeed the Marcus that Max had spoken of, stood in the doorway, his hand gripping the edge of the door. The sound of pursuit grew ever closer, and Sarah's eyes pleaded with his, carrying all the desperation of a mother willing to die for her children. The decision he would make in the next few seconds would change everything. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, his weathered face illuminated by the warehouse's dim light. 20 years on the police force hadn't prepared him for this moment. A wounded German Shepherd mother, blood-stained and desperate, shielding two tiny pups from the bitter cold. But it was the approaching voices that made his decision for him. "The trail leads this way. Check every door." The harsh commands echoed through the industrial maze. In one fluid motion, Marcus grabbed the old blanket hanging by the door and crouched down. "Come on, girl," he whispered urgently, extending his hand. "Whatever trouble you're in, we'll figure it out inside." Sarah hesitated for a split second, her instincts warring with desperation. But as another gust of icy wind cut through her fur, she made her choice. Gently gripping one pup by the scruff, she carried it inside. Marcus quickly wrapped the second pup in the blanket, cradling it against his chest as he ushered them into the warmth of his makeshift home. The warehouse had been converted into a living space, with a small office serving as Marcus's bedroom and the main floor housing his workshop. Old police files and half-finished woodworking projects cluttered the space, telling the story of a man who'd chosen solitude after leaving the force. As soon as the door closed behind them, Sarah collapsed, her strength finally giving out. The wound in her shoulder had left a small pool of blood on the concrete floor. Marcus laid the pup gently beside its sibling and mother, his trained eye assessing Sarah's injury. "Bullet wound," he muttered, running his hand through his graying hair. "What kind of trouble are you in, girl?" The pounding on the door came without warning. "Police! Open up!" Marcus's heart raced. He recognized that voice, Officer Rodriguez, one of the newer recruits on the force. What were the police doing chasing an injured dog? Unless... Making a split-second decision, Marcus grabbed another blanket and quickly covered Sarah and her pups, concealing them behind his workbench. "Stay quiet," he whispered, though he knew she couldn't understand him. Yet somehow Sarah's intelligent eyes told him she did. Opening the door, Marcus faced 3 officers, their breath visible in the cold night air. "Rodriguez," he nodded, keeping his voice casual. "It's been a while." "Sorry to disturb you, Captain," Rodriguez replied, using Marcus's old title. "We're tracking a German shepherd that escaped from a crime scene, saw blood trails leading. This way." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his body blocking their view inside. "Crime scene? Drug bust gone wrong," another officer chimed in. "K9 unit was compromised. 2 of our dogs were stolen last month, turned up at this dealer's warehouse. One's dead, the other escaped with puppies." Marcus's mind raced. Sarah wasn't just any German shepherd. She was a police dog. The pieces started falling into place, the training he'd noticed in her movements, the intelligence in her eyes, the way she'd sought him out specifically. "Haven't seen anything," Marcus replied, his voice steady, "but I'll keep an eye out. You know me, still like to help when I can." After what felt like an eternity, the officers left. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. Behind the workbench, Sarah emerged from under the blanket, her eyes fixed on him with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "You're one of ours, aren't you?" Marcus whispered, kneeling beside her. "Don't worry, girl. Whatever happened at that warehouse, whatever they did to you and your mate, you're safe now. I promise." As if understanding, Sarah gently licked his hand, then curled protectively around her sleeping pups. Marcus watched them, knowing his life had just become infinitely more complicated. But as he looked at the small family taking shelter in his warehouse, he felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving the force: purpose. The night was far from over, and Marcus knew this was just the beginning of a story that would change all their lives forever. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he cleaned Sarah's bullet wound, his old first aid training rushing back. The fluorescent lights of the warehouse cast harsh shadows across her fur, revealing more than just the fresh injury. Old scars crisscrossed her body, telling a story of prolonged abuse that made his blood boil. "What did they do to you at that place?" he muttered, gently applying antiseptic. Sarah winced, but remained still, her eyes never leaving her pups, who slept nearby, wrapped in warm blankets. The bullet had gone clean through her shoulder, a small mercy that meant no surgery was needed. As he worked, Marcus's mind raced through his years of experience. Police dogs being stolen wasn't common, but it happened. Usually they were taken for illegal fighting rings or sold to private security firms. But this was different. Drug dealers, turning police dogs against their own? That was new and deeply disturbing. A soft whimper drew his attention. One of the pups, the smaller one with a white patch on its chest, was stirring. Sarah immediately tensed, but Marcus held up his hands. "Easy, girl. Let me check on them too." To his surprise, she relaxed slightly, though her eyes tracked his. Every movement. The pups were remarkably healthy despite their ordeal, a testament to their mother's dedication. As Marcus examined them, he noticed something odd. Tiny puncture marks on their legs, partially healed. His stomach churned as the implications hit him. They were experimenting on them, weren't they? Sarah's low growl confirmed his suspicions. The drug dealers hadn't just stolen police dogs, they were using them as test subjects. The thought made him sick. 20 years on the force, and he'd seen some dark things. But this... Standing up, Marcus walked to his old filing cabinet, pulling out a burner phone he'd kept from his undercover days. He had contacts who needed to know about this, people he trusted from his time on the force. But as he reached for the phone, Sarah suddenly barked, her ears perked toward the window. Marcus froze. Through the frosted glass, shadows moved in the moonlight. Someone was out there, watching. Sarah's hackles rose as she positioned herself between her pups and the window, her injured shoulder trembling with the effort. "Down, girl," Marcus whispered, killing the lights. In the darkness, he could see them clearly now. 2 figures circling. The warehouse, their movements too precise to be random patrol officers. These were professionals, and they weren't here by chance. One of the pups began to cry, its tiny voice echoing in the vast space. Marcus's heart raced as the shadows outside paused, clearly hearing it. Sarah quickly nuzzled her pup, quieting it, but the damage was done. "We need to move," Marcus muttered, grabbing his go-bag from under the workbench. Another habit from his undercover days he'd never shaken. "There's a back room, reinforced door. Come on." Sarah gathered her pups, carrying one while Marcus gently lifted the other. They slipped into the back room, just as the sound of lockpicks scratching at the front door echoed through the warehouse. In the darkness of the reinforced room, Marcus held his breath, cradling the tiny pup against his chest. Sarah pressed against his leg, her body tense but trusting. Outside, footsteps echoed on concrete, methodically searching. Marcus looked down at Sarah and her pups, knowing that his next decisions would determine all their fates. The life he'd built here, his quiet retirement, all of it was about to change. But looking into Sarah's eyes, seeing the fierce determination of a mother protecting her children, he knew there was no going back. The real question was, how deep did this conspiracy go, and who could they trust? The footsteps drew closer, each calculated step echoing through the warehouse. Marcus pressed his ear against the reinforced door, his mind racing through possible escape routes. The room they were in had been his panic room during his undercover days. A concrete box, with a hidden tunnel that led to the adjacent building. "Check every corner," a muffled voice commanded outside. "The dog's injured, there should be blood." Marcus recognized that voice, and his heart sank. Detective James Chen, his former partner, now head of the K9 unit. What was he doing here? With these people? Sarah seemed to recognize the voice too. Her growl was so low, it was more vibration than sound. The pup in Marcus's arms squirmed, and he gently stroked its tiny head to keep it quiet. Its sibling, held carefully in Sarah's mouth, remained mercifully silent. Years of training had taught both Marcus and Sarah the value of stillness in dangerous moments. "Sir," another voice called out, "there's blood by the door, but it's been cleaned. Someone's treating the wound." "Marcus," Chen's voice was closer now, "I know you're here. Remember that case in 19, the warehouse district? This is bigger than that, much bigger." The 19 case, a massive corruption scandal that had led to Marcus's early retirement, or at least that was the official story. The truth was far more complex, involving dirty cops, missing evidence, and a series of accidents that had forced Marcus to disappear into this self-imposed exile. Sarah's ears suddenly pricked forward, her body tensing. Through the door, Marcus heard it too, the subtle click of a gun's safety being switched off. "Last chance, old friend," Chen called out. Those dogs are government property now. This goes way above your pay grade. Government property? Marcus looked at Sarah, remembering the puncture marks on the pups, the experimentation. What kind of classified operation could justify this? The pup in his arm started trembling, and suddenly Marcus noticed something strange. Its pupils were dilating rapidly, its tiny body temperature rising. Sarah whined softly, nudging her other pup, which was showing similar symptoms. "They're going through withdrawal," Marcus whispered, the horrifying realization hitting him. Whatever they injected them with, it wasn't just drugs. They're looking for them because... A loud crash interrupted his thoughts as something was thrown through the warehouse window. The familiar hiss of gas filled the air. "Tear gas," Marcus muttered. "Chen's not playing around." He reached for the hidden lever that would open the tunnel entrance, but Sarah's bark stopped him. She was staring at the pups, her eyes wild with maternal panic. Moving them now in their fragile state could be fatal. The gas would seep in eventually, even through the reinforced door. They had minutes, maybe less. Marcus looked at Sarah, then at the pups, then at the tunnel entrance. In that moment, he made a decision that would alter the course of not just their lives, but potentially something much bigger. Reaching into his go-bag, he pulled out his old service weapon and badge. "Sometimes," he whispered to Sarah, "the only way out is through." Sarah's eyes met his, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever secrets these pups carried in their blood, whatever conspiracy they'd stumbled into, they would face it together. The gas was starting to seep under the door as Marcus checked his weapon. Outside, Chen was giving orders to breach the room. Time was up. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the most dangerous decisions are the ones we make to protect those who can't. Protect themselves. The tear gas crept under the door like ghostly fingers, but Marcus had already made his move. He pulled an old gas mask from his go-bag, another relic of his police days, and reached for his phone. With trembling fingers, he dialed a number he'd sworn never to use again. "Authorization code, Victor 79 Delta. He whispered into the phone. "Operation Silverback is compromised. I repeat, Silverback is compromised." The response was immediate, 3 short beeps. His old emergency protocol was still active. Within minutes, every security camera in a 5-block radius would go dark. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sarah watched him intently, her body curved protectively around her trembling pups. The withdrawal symptoms were getting worse. Their tiny bodies shaking, fur damp with sweat. Whatever they'd been injected with, it was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. "Chen!" Marcus called out, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "The pups are going into withdrawal. You want them alive? We need to talk." A moment of silence followed, broken only by the hiss of tear gas and the pups' soft whimpers. Then Chen's voice, closer now. "Open the door, Marcus. We have medics standing by." "Like the medics who experimented on them?" Marcus's grip tightened on his weapon. "What's really going on here, James? What did they put in these pups?" "You don't understand." Chen's voice carried an edge of desperation. "This isn't about drugs. It's about evolution. These pups, they're carrying something that could change everything." Sarah's growl deepened, and Marcus saw something in her eyes he hadn't noticed before. Not just fear or protective instinct, but understanding. She'd heard these conversations before, in that warehouse where they'd held her. "They're not lab rats, Chen," Marcus said, his voice hard. "They're living beings. Whatever you're trying to create..." "Create?" Chen laughed bitterly. "We're not creating anything. We're trying to control it. That German Shepherd line, they're evolving on their own, developing abilities we can't explain. The drug trials were attempts to suppress it, not enhance it." Marcus looked at Sarah, really looked at her. The intelligence in her eyes, the way she seemed to understand everything happening around her. It went beyond normal canine awareness, and her pups, born in captivity, carried whatever this was in their blood. Suddenly the smaller pup convulsed, its tiny body arching. Sarah whined in distress, trying to comfort it. The other pup followed suit, their synchronized suffering filling the small room with helpless cries. "They're dying, Marcus!" Chen shouted. "Open the door, whatever you think of me, of all this. Those pups need the stabilizing agent." Marcus knelt beside Sarah, his hand resting gently on her head. "It's your call, girl," he whispered. "They're your pups. Do we trust them?" Sarah's response came not in a bark or growl, but in something far more startling. She pressed her forehead against Marcus's temple, and suddenly his mind was flooded with images, memories of the warehouse, of other dogs being injected, of some showing remarkable abilities before being put down when they couldn't be controlled. Marcus gasped, stumbling backward. Sarah's eyes met his, no longer just intelligent but knowing. This was what they feared, what they were trying to suppress. The pups hadn't been infected with something foreign. They'd inherited their mother's gift. The door hinges groaned as Chen's team prepared to breach. Time had run out. "Last chance, Marcus," Chen called. "What's it going to be?" Marcus looked at Sarah, still reeling from what she'd shared with him. The choice they made now would reshape not just their future, but potentially the understanding of consciousness itself. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Stand down, Chen," Marcus's voice boomed through the reinforced door. "I'm coming out, but on my terms." He quickly wrapped each trembling pup in thermal blankets from his go-bag, his mind still reeling from Sarah's mental connection. 2 minutes, Chen responded. "Then we breach." Marcus turned to Sarah, speaking in a low, urgent whisper. "Whatever happens next, follow my lead. Your abilities, they can't know you shared them with me. It's our only advantage." Sarah's eyes locked with his, conveying a depth of understanding that still shook him to his core. The pups' conditions were deteriorating rapidly, their small bodies burning with fever as they fought against whatever was trying to suppress their inherited gifts. Marcus pulled an old flash grenade from his bag, another remnant of his past life. "When I open this door, there's going to be chaos. Stay close to me." The door creaked open slowly, releasing a cloud of tear gas into the room. Through his mask, Marcus could make out 5 figures in tactical gear, Chen at the center, all weapons trained on them. "Easy," Marcus called out, holding one pup while Sarah carried the other. "The pups need medical attention, now." Chen stepped forward, his face obscured by a gas mask. "Put them in the carrier." He gestured to a specialized transport cage behind him. "No." Marcus's voice was steel. "You want to treat them? Do it here, where we can see everything." A tense silence followed. The pups whimpered in unison, their conditions worsening with each passing second. Finally, Chen nodded to one of his men, who approached with a medical kit. "The stabilizing agent first," Chen ordered. "Then we can discuss." Marcus never let him finish. In one fluid motion, he dropped the flash grenade, shielding the pup in his arms as brilliant light filled the room. Sarah, anticipating his move, had already lunged forward, knocking 2 officers aside. Through the chaos and shouting, Marcus and Sarah moved as one unit, years of police training evident in their synchronized movement. They burst through the warehouse's side door into the snowy night, the precious pups secured against their bodies. "Marcus!" Chen's voice carried over the chaos. "You don't understand what you're doing. Those pups, they're not just dogs." "No," Marcus muttered, running through the maze of warehouses with Sarah at his side. "They're the future, you're afraid." Sirens wailed in the distance as they navigated the industrial labyrinth. Marcus knew every alley, every hidden passage from his years working undercover. But Chen knew them too. The pups were getting worse, their tiny bodies racked with tremors. Without the stabilizing agent, Marcus wasn't sure how long they had. But delivering them back into the hands of those who would suppress their gifts, who would turn them into weapons or worse, wasn't an option. Sarah suddenly stopped, her ears perking up. Through their newfound connection, Marcus felt her urgency. Someone was ahead of them, waiting in the shadows. "We're surrounded," he whispered, cradling the shivering pup closer. But Sarah's response wasn't fear, it was determination. She pressed closer to Marcus, and suddenly he understood. They didn't need to outrun them. They needed to show them exactly what they were afraid of. Snow swirled around them as Marcus and Sarah stood in the abandoned loading dock, surrounded by armed figures emerging from the shadows. The pups' conditions had reached a critical point, their tiny bodies glowing with an almost imperceptible blue luminescence. "It's happening," Chen's voice cut through the howling wind as he stepped forward. "The transformation we tried to prevent, once it starts, there's no going back." Sarah's eyes began to emit the same ethereal glow as her pups, and Marcus felt her consciousness brush against his mind again, stronger this time. Images flooded his awareness, other dogs in laboratories, their genetic code somehow awakening, evolving. Some had developed abilities beyond explanation: telepathy, healing, even manipulation of matter itself. "This is why you experimented on them," Marcus said, his voice thick with anger. "You weren't trying to suppress their abilities, you were trying to control them." "Control them?" Chen laughed bitterly. "We were trying to save humanity. Do you have any idea what happens when they fully evolve? The military has plans." A sudden pulse of energy emanated from Sarah and her pups, knocking the surrounding officers off their feet. The snow around them began to swirl unnaturally, creating a barrier of white. "The pups!" Chen shouted, struggling to his feet. "Their transformation is accelerating Sarah's abilities. Take them down. Now!" But before anyone could fire, Sarah's consciousness merged completely with Marcus's. In that moment, he understood everything, the full scope of what was happening. These weren't just random mutations. The German shepherds were evolving into something beyond human comprehension, becoming bridges between worlds. The pups' whimpers turned into small howls, their bodies lifting slightly off the ground. The blue glow intensified, spreading to Sarah and then, to everyone's shock, to Marcus himself. "My God," Chen whispered, lowering his weapon. "It's not just the dogs. They can share it. They can elevate us." Through their mental link, Sarah showed Marcus the truth. Her kind wasn't evolving to dominate or threaten humanity. They were evolving to help humanity reach its next stage. The pups weren't weapons to be controlled. They were keys to understanding what humans could become. The swirling snow settled, revealing Marcus and Sarah standing with the pups, all of them emanating the soft blue glow. The armed officers stepped back, their weapons wavering. "You have a choice, Chen," Marcus said, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "Keep fighting this evolution or help us understand it. These pups aren't the enemy. They're a gift." Sarah's consciousness pressed against his, showing him one final vision. A future where humans and dogs work together, their combined abilities healing a broken world. But that future hung by a thread, dependent on the decisions made in this moment. The pups' glow began to stabilize, their tremors subsiding. Whatever transformation had begun couldn't be stopped now. The question was, would humanity embrace it or fear it? Chen looked at his men, then back at the glowing family before him. In his eyes, Marcus saw the battle between fear and hope, between control and trust. The next few seconds would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of two species. The loading dock had become eerily silent, save for the soft hum emanating from Sarah, her pups, and Marcus. The blue glow pulsed gently, casting otherworldly shadows on the snow-covered ground. Chen's men remained frozen, their weapons still raised, but their hands visibly trembling. "Stand down," Chen finally ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The command hung in the air for a moment before his team slowly lowered their weapons. "You're right, Marcus. We've been approaching this all wrong." But Sarah's growl cut through the moment of apparent surrender. Through their connection, Marcus saw flashes of Chen's past deceptions, moments where he'd promised safety only to betray it. The pups squirmed in their blankets, their glow intensifying with their mother's distress. "She doesn't trust you, James," Marcus said, feeling Sarah's memories of betrayal flow through him. "And neither do I. Not after what I've seen." Suddenly, the radio on Chen's vest crackled to life. All units converge on location. Asset recovery team en route. Containment protocols active. Chen's face fell. "Marcus, you don't understand. I can't stop what's coming. They've been tracking this evolution for years. The military, private contractors, they're all involved. What happens here tonight was never really in our hands." The sound of helicopters filled the air, their searchlights cutting through the swirling snow. Sarah's consciousness pressed urgently against Marcus's mind, sharing a critical piece of information. The pup's transformation wasn't just changing them, it was creating a permanent bridge between human and canine consciousness. If the wrong people gained control of this power. "There's still time," Marcus said, looking at Chen. "Help us. Really help us this time." The searchlights drew closer, and Chen made his decision. Pulling out his radio, he smashed it against the wall. "The tunnels," he said quickly. "The old prohibition routes under the warehouse district. They're not on any modern maps." Sarah's mind touched Chen's briefly, verifying his intentions. This time, the truth was there, genuine remorse, a desire to make things right. "Marcus," Chen continued, checking his watch, "these teams won't just be looking to contain the dogs. After what they've seen here, they'll eliminate any human witnesses too, even their own people." The pups had stopped trembling. Their glow steady now. Whatever they were becoming, they were stronger together. Marcus felt it through his link with Sarah. The evolution wasn't just physical, it was building a bridge between species, creating something entirely new. "The closest tunnel entrance is in the basement of Building 7, Chen said, already moving. "I'll create a diversion, buy you some time." "But Marcus—" He paused, looking at the glowing family. "Whatever they become, whatever this evolution leads to, protect them. Humanity needs this chance, even if we're too afraid to admit it." The helicopters were almost on top of them now, their rotors whipping the snow into a frenzy. Through their mental connection, Sarah showed Marcus the way forward, not just the path to the tunnels, but the first steps toward a future where the barrier between human and canine consciousness no longer existed. As they moved through the shadows, Marcus realized they weren't just running from something. They were running toward humanity's next great leap forward. The old prohibition tunnels smelled of damp earth and forgotten secrets. Marcus led the way with a small flashlight, while Sarah followed close behind, carrying one pup while he held the other. Their collective blue glow provided an eerie additional light source, casting strange shadows on the century-old brick walls. "Easy now," Marcus whispered, as they navigated through a partially collapsed section. Above ground, they could hear the muffled sound of helicopters and shouting. Chen's diversion had bought them time. But how much? Through their mental link, Sarah shared her growing concern. The pups' evolution was stabilizing, but their power was growing. Each passing minute strengthened their abilities, and with it, the permanent connection they were forming between human and canine consciousness. She showed Marcus visions of what was happening in their tiny bodies. DNA restructuring itself, neural pathways expanding in ways that defied current scientific understanding. A sudden explosion rocked the ground above them, sending dirt cascading from the tunnel ceiling. The pups whimpered in unison, their glow flickering momentarily. "Chen," Marcus muttered, knowing what such an explosion likely meant. Sarah pressed, her head against his leg, sharing his grief. Despite his past actions, Chen had chosen to help them in the end. They reached a junction in the tunnels, and Marcus paused. "Which way?" he asked, knowing Sarah's enhanced senses could guide them. But before she could respond, a new sensation flooded their shared consciousness, other minds reaching out. The pups suddenly became alert, their tiny heads raising in unison. Through their combined awareness, Marcus and Sarah felt it. More evolved dogs, somewhere in the tunnel system. Not just any dogs, German shepherds like Sarah. A hidden community of them waiting. "So we're not alone," Marcus whispered, understanding dawning on him. "There are others who've escaped, who've evolved." Sarah's memories confirmed it, whispered stories in the research facility of dogs who had gotten away, who had found sanctuary somewhere in the city. They followed the mental beacon, the pups growing stronger as they drew closer to their kind. The tunnels began to show signs of recent use, fresh paw prints in the dirt, carefully concealed markers on the walls. Then they saw it, a soft blue glow ahead, similar to their own. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber, once perhaps a speakeasy during Prohibition. Now it served a very different purpose. Inside, several German shepherds lay in carefully arranged spaces, all emanating the same ethereal glow. Some had pups of their own. Others showed signs of recent escape from facilities like the one Sarah had fled. But most remarkably, there were humans among them, people who, like Marcus, had chosen to protect and join with the evolving dogs. "Welcome," a voice spoke in their minds. An older German shepherd with greying fur approached them. "We've been waiting for you." The pups squirmed excitedly, sensing the presence of their evolved kin. Sarah's relief flooded through their mental link, but Marcus felt her caution too. After everything they'd been through, trust wouldn't come easily. "You're safe here," the elder dog communicated. "But time is short. What begins with your pups must spread quickly, or those who fear our evolution will find ways to stop it." Marcus looked at the assembled group of humans and dogs, all connected by the same remarkable change that he now shared with Sarah and her pups. They weren't just fugitives hiding in old tunnels. They were the beginning of something revolutionary. The question was, were they ready for what came next? In the dim blue glow of the underground chamber, Marcus and Sarah were led deeper into what appeared to be an organized sanctuary. The space had been methodically converted, with different areas serving specific purposes: medical stations, rest areas, and what looked like training zones. The elder German shepherd, who introduced himself through their mental link as Atlas, guided them to a circular area where other evolved dogs and their human companions sat in what appeared to be a council formation. The pups, now more stable, watched with unusual alertness for their age. "Show them," Atlas commanded telepathically, and suddenly the air in the center of the circle shimmered with projected memories from multiple minds. Marcus gasped as he saw the full history unfold. Before him, it had started 3 years ago, subtle changes in certain German shepherd bloodlines. Enhanced intelligence evolved into telepathic abilities, then more. The military had noticed first, then private research facilities. What began as observation quickly turned to experimentation. Sarah wasn't the first they captured. A woman spoke up from across the circle. She wore a lab coat with a torn ID badge from Genfront Industries. "I was there when they started the breeding program. They thought they could control the evolution, weaponize it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. Through their shared connection, Sarah revealed more: the systematic attempts to breed, The most powerful dogs, the cruel experiments to unlock their abilities, the disposal of those deemed failures. Her pups represented something unique, a perfect blend of the evolved genetics, born with abilities stronger than any before them. The pups are a tipping point, Atlas projected, his mental voice carrying decades of wisdom. Their level of evolution is unprecedented. Through them, the bridge between human and canine consciousness could become permanent, spreading to others naturally. One of the pups suddenly stood, its tiny form glowing brighter. Through their collective consciousness, everyone in the room felt it, a surge of pure potential, a glimpse of what humanity and canines could become together. That's why they're hunting so desperately, Marcus realized aloud. It's not just about weapons or control anymore. This could change everything. Society, communication, the very nature of human-animal relationships. And not everyone wants that change, another council member added mentally. There are those who believe this evolution should be stopped at any cost. Sarah moved closer to Marcus, sharing a private thought. Her pups weren't just powerful. They were catalysts. Their presence was already strengthening the abilities of every evolved dog in the room, and even accelerating the potential in those who hadn't yet changed. We've established safe houses across the city, Atlas continued, but we need more than hiding places now. The pups must be protected long enough for their influence to spread naturally. Once enough of us have evolved, it cannot be stopped. Suddenly, the entire chamber went silent. Above them, the distant sound of drilling echoed through the tunnel system. They weren't just following their trail, they were systematically searching every underground space in the area. They're getting closer, Marcus said, feeling Sarah's rising tension. How many exits do we have? Atlas's response was grim. Not enough. And with their equipment, nowhere in these tunnels will stay hidden for long. The pups, sensing the danger, pressed closer to Sarah. Through their enhanced connection, Marcus felt what everyone in the room knew. Running wasn't an option anymore. It was time to make a stand. The drilling sounds grew closer as Atlas quickly mobilized the sanctuary's residents. Through their shared mental link, Marcus watched in amazement as humans and evolved German shepherds moved in perfect synchronization, each pair knowing their role without a word being spoken. The pups are the priority, Atlas projected to the group. Everything else is secondary. His mental voice carried the weight of command, earned through experiences Marcus could feel echoing in their shared consciousness. The former GenFront scientist, Dr. Emma Carter, as she finally introduced herself, rushed forward with what looked like modified medical equipment. The pup's energy signature is what they're tracking, she explained, both verbally and mentally. We can mask it, but it'll take time. Sarah's anxiety pulsed through their link as Dr. Carter approached with the equipment. Marcus felt the German shepherd's memories of similar devices being used for darker purposes in the research facility. But there was no deception in Dr. Carter's mind, only genuine desire to help. Trust her, Marcus whispered to Sarah, their shared consciousness confirming his words. She's not like the others. As Dr. Carter worked to mask the pup's energy signature, the drilling suddenly stopped. Everyone in the chamber froze, their combined mental awareness stretching out to sense what was happening above. They're positioning charges, one of the other evolved shepherds projected. They're going to breach. Marcus's police training kicked in. How many access points to this chamber? 3, Atlas responded, showing him mental images of each. Entrance, but the north tunnel collapsed last month. They'll have to... A massive explosion cut him off, rocking the entire chamber. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as flashlight beams began cutting through the smoke from the western tunnel. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion through their shared consciousness. The pups, perhaps sensing the imminent danger, suddenly began to glow with an intensity that overwhelmed Dr. Carter's masking equipment. But instead of just radiating energy, they were doing something new. They were sharing it. Waves of blue energy pulsed from their tiny bodies, washing over every dog and human in the chamber. Marcus felt it like electricity in his veins. Their power wasn't just growing, it was evolving beyond anything the sanctuary had seen before. Sarah's mind pressed urgently against his. The pups weren't just strengthening the existing abilities of the evolved dogs. They were accelerating the potential in every German Shepherd present, even those who hadn't yet shown signs of change. "My God," Dr. Carter whispered, watching her instruments. "They're not just carriers of the evolution, they're amplifiers. They're turning all of us into catalysts." The tactical team breaching the tunnel never had a chance to process what they were seeing. 20 German Shepherds glowing with shared power, their human partners mentally linked and moving as one unit. It wasn't just about telepathy anymore. The dogs were sharing their strength, their speed, their senses. They had become something entirely new. The real question was, were they ready to show the world what they'd become? The tactical team froze at the tunnel entrance, their weapons trained on the glowing assembly before them. Through the shared consciousness, Marcus could feel their mix of awe and terror. These weren't the mindless attack dogs they'd been briefed about. Atlas stepped forward, his aged frame now radiating with the pup's amplified energy. When he projected his thoughts, even the non-evolved humans on the tactical team could hear him. "You have a choice to make, one that will echo through history." The lead officer's radio crackled. "Team Alpha, status report. Have you secured the assets?" Sarah's pups, still cradled safely between Marcus and their mother, let out a synchronized pulse of energy that did something unprecedented. It opened a mental bridge to every human in the room, evolved or not. For one brief moment, the tactical team experienced what Marcus and the others had discovered. The profound connection, the shared consciousness, the potential for something greater than the sum of their species. "Stand down!" the team leader suddenly commanded, lowering his weapon. His men followed suit, their minds still reeling from what they'd experienced. "Command, this is Team Alpha. The tunnel collapsed. No signs of targets. We'll need excavation. Equipment to proceed." Dr. Carter stepped forward, her scientific mind racing with possibilities. "The pups," she projected to the group, "they're not just evolving themselves, they're teaching others how to trigger the change. They're turning every compatible German Shepherd into a potential catalyst." A second explosion rocked the chamber, this time from the eastern tunnel. More teams would be coming. Dr. Emma Carter, as she finally introduced herself, rushed forward with what looked like modified medical equipment. The brief respite had given them a few allies, but the real force hadn't arrived yet. Marcus felt Sarah's determination through their link. She showed him what needed to happen next. It wasn't enough to hide or fight. They needed to spread the evolution faster than it could be contained. "Atlas!" Marcus called out, both verbally and mentally. "How many other sanctuaries are there in the city?" The elder dog shared a mental map, 12 locations, each hiding evolved shepherds and their human partners. But more importantly, he showed regular dog parks, canine units, shepherd breeding facilities, places where the pup's catalytic effect could trigger chain reactions of evolution. "They can't stop what they can't contain," Dr. Carter added, understanding, dawning in her eyes. "And they can't contain what's everywhere at once." The pups suddenly stood, their tiny forms pulsing with purpose. Through the group consciousness, they shared their instinctive understanding. The evolution wasn't meant to be hidden away in underground sanctuaries. It was meant to spread, to grow, to transform both species into something greater together. Sarah looked at Marcus, and in that moment their shared mind held the same thought. It was time to emerge from the shadows. Time to show the world that evolution wasn't something to be feared or controlled, but embraced. The real question was, how do you reveal something this profound to a world that might not be ready to accept it? The chamber hummed with nervous energy as Marcus and Atlas quickly formulated their plan. Through their shared consciousness, ideas flowed like water between human and canine minds, each building upon the other. "We need to split up," Marcus projected, his thoughts reaching every evolved being in the room. Multiple targets, simultaneous, exposure, too many points of contact for them to contain. Sarah showed him a memory through their link, a local news broadcast she'd seen while in captivity, announcing the city's annual K9 demonstration in Central Park. Every police dog unit in the city would be there, including dozens of German Shepherds. Tomorrow morning, the former tactical team leader, now introduced as David, added, "It's perfect timing, maximum exposure, public setting. They can't risk overt action with so many witnesses." Dr. Carter was already running calculations on her tablet. The pup's catalytic effect has a radius of approximately 50 meters now, and it's growing. If we position ourselves strategically around the event. A third explosion interrupted her, closer this time. The remaining tunnels wouldn't hold much longer. Atlas's mental voice cut through the chaos. "We have 6 hours until dawn. We move in pairs, one evolved shepherd with one human partner. The pups must be separated to maximize the spread." Sarah's growl echoed through both the chamber and their shared consciousness. The thought of separating from either pup sent waves of maternal panic through their link. Marcus knelt beside her, placing a hand on her head. "They'll be safer apart," he projected gently, "and they're stronger now. You've felt it. They're ready." Through their connection, Sarah shared her deepest fear, that her pups would face the same tortures she'd endured in the facility. The memory of cold laboratories and cruel experiments rippled through the group mind, strengthening their resolve. "No one will touch them," Atlas assured, his mental voice firm. "Each pup will have 2 guardians, 2 evolved shepherds and their human partners. The rest of us will create a diversion at key points throughout the city." Dr. Carter quickly assigned positions, her scientific mind mapping out the optimal spread pattern. The first pup goes to the east entrance of the park with Team 1, the second to the west with Team 2. The rest of us will position ourselves around the perimeter, creating a web of evolutionary catalyst points. Sarah finally nodded, accepting the necessity of the plan. She gently nuzzled each pup, their shared consciousness carrying all the love and courage a mother could give. Marcus felt a shift in the energy around them. The pups weren't just accepting their role, they were embracing it. Their tiny forms glowed with purpose, understanding their part in something far greater than themselves. As the groups prepared to move out, Atlas shared one final thought. "What we do tonight will be remembered for generations, not as the day dogs evolved, but as the day 2 species chose to evolve together." Above them, the sound of drilling resumed, closer than ever. Dr. Emma Carter, as she finally introduced herself, rushed forward with what looked like modified medical equipment. The time had come to show the world what evolution truly meant. The city slept uneasily beneath a blanket of pre-dawn mist, unaware of the transformation about to unfold. Marcus and Sarah moved silently through back alleys with their assigned pup, while Atlas and Dr. Carter took the other toward their designated position. The rest of the sanctuary's residents had already dispersed to their strategic locations around Central Park. Through their mental network, Marcus could feel the other teams moving into position. The tactical team that had joined them, now fully committed to their cause, was creating false trails to keep the military forces occupied on the other side of the city. 3 hours until the demonstration begins, David's thoughts reached them from his position near the park's east entrance. Military command is still focused on the tunnel system. They haven't figured out our plan yet. Sarah suddenly froze, her consciousness flooding Marcus's mind with alarm. Through her enhanced senses, they detected movement on the rooftops. Professional, coordinated, definitely not regular law enforcement. "They're herding us," Marcus realized, recognizing the tactical pattern from his police days. "They're not just tracking us, they're trying to guide our movement." The pup in Sarah's mouth whimpered softly, its glow flickering with anxiety. But something else was happening too. Its power was growing, adapting. Through their shared awareness, Marcus felt the pup learning, evolving in real time to meet the threat. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Dr. Carter's thoughts reached them. The pup's abilities are developing faster than we anticipated. They're not just catalysts anymore, they're becoming something else entirely. A helicopter swept overhead, its searchlight cutting through the mist. Marcus and Sarah pressed against a wall, their minds linked in perfect synchronization. The pup, instead of cowering, reached out with its developing consciousness, touching the minds of every German shepherd within range. Pets in apartments, strays in alleys, even the military dogs in the helicopter above. "They're calling to their kind," Atlas projected, his mental voice filled with wonder. "Not just evolving them, awakening something that was always there." Through their connection, Sarah shared a profound realization. The pups weren't creating something new. They were removing barriers, awakening dormant potential that had always existed between humans and dogs. Each German shepherd they touched became not just evolved, but a key to unlocking this potential in others. The sky began to lighten imperceptibly. In the east, dawn was approaching, and with it, the moment that would change everything. But as they moved closer to their position, Marcus felt something else through their shared consciousness, a familiar presence. "Chen," he projected to the others. "He's alive." Sarah's mind touched his, sharing his mixture of relief and concern. If Chen had survived, what else had changed? Whose side was he really on? The pup suddenly stood taller in Sarah's grip, its glow steadying. Through their link, it shared a truth that all of them felt. Sides didn't matter anymore. What was coming was bigger than any individual loyalty. The evolution wasn't just changing what they were, it was changing what they could be together. The first hints of sunrise painted the city skyline in hues of amber and rose. Marcus, Sarah, and their pup had reached their designated position near the park's western entrance, where the K9 demonstration would begin in less than 2 hours. Through their mental network, they could feel the other teams in place, a web of evolved consciousness spanning the entire park. Chen's presence grew stronger as he approached their position. Unlike before, his mind was now open, touchable. He had evolved. The pup had sensed it first, its tiny form vibrating with recognition. "The military unit I was with," Chen's thoughts reached them, clear and unguarded. When the pup's energy pulse hit us in the tunnels, it changed everything. Not just the dogs, some of us humans too. Those who were compatible. Sarah's consciousness brushed against Chen's, verifying his transformation. The memories she found there were raw, honest. The moment of evolution had stripped away his ability to deceive. The pup had given him what he didn't even know he was missing. True connection. Through their shared awareness, they felt the park becoming alive. Early morning joggers, dog walkers, and the first wave of police K9 units arriving for the demonstration. Dr. Emma Carter, as she finally introduced herself, rushed forward with what looked like modified medical equipment. Each German shepherd that came within range of the pup felt the call, the awakening of something ancient and powerful. They're evolving too quickly. Dr. Carter's worried thoughts reached them from her position. The military will notice the energy signatures. We need to wait for the main event. But the pup had other ideas. Through their link, it shared what it instinctively knew. Evolution couldn't be scheduled or contained. It was a force of nature, as unstoppable as the dawn now breaking over the city. Marcus felt Sarah's fierce pride as their pup took its first independent action. It reached out, not just to the German shepherds nearby, but to their human partners as well. Each connection it formed was unique, personal, showing humans and dogs alike what they could become together. The other sanctuaries are reporting. The same thing, Atlas projected. Both pups are calling to every compatible mind in the city. The evolution, it's already begun. Above them, military helicopters appeared on the horizon, but something was different about them. Through their enhanced senses, Sarah detected familiar presences aboard, evolved dogs and their newly awakened human partners, choosing connection over control. The pup stood proudly now, its glow visible even in the growing daylight. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus understood what was happening. They hadn't needed to wait for the demonstration. The demonstration was already happening in every corner of the city, where dogs and humans were discovering their shared potential. Chen's thoughts reached them one final time. The question was never whether humanity was ready. The question was, are we brave enough to become what we were always meant to be? As the sun rose fully over the city, the answer became clear. The evolution wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The morning sun cast long shadows across Central Park as more K9 units arrived for the demonstration. But something unprecedented was happening. Every German shepherd that entered the park was experiencing the awakening, their consciousness expanding to connect with their human partners in ways that defied explanation. Through their shared mental network, Marcus and Sarah watched in awe as the transformation spread. Police dogs and their handlers stopped mid-stride, their minds touching for the first time. Pet German shepherds out for morning walks, suddenly, turned to their owners with glowing eyes, bridging the gap between species that had existed for millennia. "It's beautiful," Dr. Carter projected, her scientific mind struggling to quantify what she was witnessing. The pups aren't just catalysts anymore. They're keystones. They're stabilizing the evolution, making it permanent. The pup in Sarah's care stood proudly, its tiny form radiating waves of pure potential. Through their link, Marcus felt its joy as each new connection formed, each barrier fell. This wasn't just about awakening abilities, it was about remembering what humans and dogs could be together. Suddenly, Atlas's urgent thoughts cut through their wonder. Military response teams are mobilizing. They're not all evolved. Some are still fighting this. Sarah's consciousness brushed against Marcus's, sharing her strategy. They didn't need to fight. They just needed to show them. The pup understood instantly. It reached out to the approaching military units, not with force, but with truth. Through the shared consciousness, every soldier, every handler, every dog felt what was possible. The depth of connection, the power of unity, the potential for something greater than conflict. Some resisted, their minds closed to the possibility. But others felt the call of evolution and chose to answer. Chen's voice joined the mental chorus. The other sanctuary teams are reporting the same thing across the city. It's not just German shepherds anymore. Other breeds are starting to show signs. The potential was always there, just waiting to be awakened. Marcus watched as the morning light caught the subtle blue glow now emanating from hundreds of dogs and humans throughout the park. What had started as a hidden evolution was becoming a visible transformation, impossible to deny or contain. The scheduled K9 demonstration had transformed into something far more profound. In the heart of Central Park, hundreds of evolved German shepherds and their human partners stood together, their shared consciousness creating a tapestry of light and understanding that even non-evolved onlookers could sense. Sarah's pup, now glowing with unprecedented brightness, had become the center of this transformation. Dr. Emma Carter, as she finally introduced herself, rushed forward with what looked like modified medical equipment. Through their mental network, Marcus felt its purpose crystallize. It wasn't just sharing power, it was sharing truth. The truth that humans and dogs had always been meant for more than master and companion. "The media's arriving," Chen projected, his thoughts tinged with concern. "Once this goes public, there's no turning back." News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing the ethereal scene below. Hundreds of phones were raised, recording the moment when the barrier between species began to dissolve. Dr. Carter's scientific observations flowed through their shared consciousness. The evolution is stabilizing. Each new connection makes the network stronger. It's becoming self-sustaining. The pup suddenly stood taller, its consciousness reaching out to touch the minds of the gathering crowd. Through their link, Marcus and Sarah felt what it was sharing. Not just the ability to connect, but the understanding of what that connection meant. Memories flowed like water through the collective consciousness. Dogs and humans throughout. History, always together, always reaching for something just beyond their grasp. The pup showed them what they'd always been moving toward. A future where the bond between species became a bridge to greater understanding. Atlas's wise presence joined the chorus. This was never about evolving beyond what we are. It was about becoming what we were always meant to be, together. The military units that had surrounded the park faced a choice that would define humanity's future. Through the shared awareness, Marcus felt their internal struggle, the conflict between duty and possibility, between fear and hope. Sarah's fierce determination radiated through their link as she stood protectively near her pup, ready to defend this moment of transformation. But the pup had a different idea. Instead of bracing for conflict, it amplified its call, reaching out to every mind within range, evolved or not, sharing not just power, but purpose. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and it was being broadcast live across the globe. The morning, sunlight danced with the blue aura that now enveloped much of Central Park. News helicopters hovered above as social media exploded with videos and images of the unprecedented scene. Hundreds of glowing German shepherds and their human partners connected in ways that defied conventional understanding. Through their mental network, Marcus and Sarah felt the ripples of change spreading far beyond the park's boundaries. The pup's consciousness was reaching through the digital broadcasts themselves, touching minds through screens and speakers, awakening potential in German shepherds and humans across the city, then the state and beyond. "It's going global," Dr. Carter projected, her thoughts filled with wonder. "The footage, it's not just showing the evolution, it's carrying it. The pups have found a way to transmit the awakening through technology itself." The military's response team stood frozen, their weapons lowered, as they watched their own canine units transform before their eyes. The choice between conflict and connection was becoming clearer with each passing moment. Sarah's pup, now radiating with a power that seemed to pulse in harmony with its sibling across the park, shared a vision through their collective consciousness. This was just the beginning. The bond between humans and dogs was about to transcend. Every barrier, language, distance, even time itself, Chen's thoughts reached them tinged with awe. The other sanctuaries are reporting similar phenomena worldwide. Every German shepherd that sees the broadcast, every human that watches with an open heart, they're all feeling the call. Atlas his aged wisdom flowing through their shared awareness, understood what was happening. The pups aren't just catalysts for evolution. They're remembering what we all once were, eons ago, before the divide between human and canine consciousness began. They're healing an ancient separation. The morning light grew stronger, but now it competed with the ethereal glow that seemed to be spreading like wildfire through the city. Through their link, Marcus felt Sarah's joy as she watched her pup fulfill a destiny greater than any of them had imagined. This wasn't just about dogs becoming more than dogs, or humans becoming more than human. It was about two species remembering they had never truly been separate at all. The sun climbed higher in the sky as the transformation reached a critical point. Through the shared consciousness, Marcus and Sarah felt the moment approaching, a threshold that would make the evolution irreversible. Their pup, now pulsing with an almost blinding radiance, had become a beacon of change visible from every corner of the city. News stations worldwide were broadcasting the phenomenon live. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of millions trying to share what they were witnessing. But more importantly, every broadcast, every shared video carried with it the spark of evolution. "The military's standing down," Chen projected, his thoughts reaching the entire network. "Not just here, everywhere. The evolution has reached their highest ranks. They're seeing what we see." Dr. Carter's scientific mind raced as she documented the unprecedented event. The pups have tapped into something fundamental, the quantum field that connects all consciousness. They're not just evolving us, they're reminding us of a connection that's always existed. Through their mental link, Sarah shared a profound understanding with Marcus. Her pup wasn't creating something new, it was awakening something ancient. The bond between humans and dogs had always held this potential. It just needed the right catalyst to blossom. Atlas's wise presence resonated through their shared awareness. For millennia, we've been partners, friends, companions. Now we become something more. Two species choosing to evolve as one. The pup stood tall now, its tiny form belying the immense power it channeled. Through the collective consciousness, it shared visions of what was to come. A world where the barrier between human and canine understanding dissolved completely, where both species could reach their full potential together. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Around them, Central Park had become a sea of blue light as more and more German shepherds and their human partners experienced the awakening. But something else was happening too. Other breeds were beginning to show signs of change, suggesting that this was just the first step in a greater transformation. The evolution had reached a point of no return, and the world would never be the same. The morning sun had reached its zenith, bathing Central Park in golden light that merged with the ethereal blue glow emanating from hundreds of evolved beings. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus and Sarah felt the transformation deepening, becoming permanent in ways that would reshape the future of both species. The pup, now radiating with confident purpose, shared something remarkable through their mental network. It wasn't just connecting minds, it was bridging dimensions of understanding that humans and dogs had only glimpsed in their deepest bonds. "Look at this data," Dr. Carter projected, her scientific excitement flowing through their link. "The neural patterns between bonded pairs are perfectly synchronizing. It's like they're becoming quantum entangled on a biological level." Through their connection, Sarah revealed what she'd always known instinctively. Dogs had been preparing for this moment throughout their entire history with humans. Every generation of loyal companions had strengthened the potential for this evolution, building toward this threshold of transformation. Atlas's wisdom resonated through their shared awareness. We didn't domesticate each other. We chose each other, knowing somewhere deep within that this day would come. The military and police units that had once sought to contain this change were now part of it, their own German shepherds leading them into the evolution. Through the collective consciousness, Marcus felt the last pockets of resistance giving way to wonder. Chen's thoughts reached them from across the park. The president is about to make an announcement. The world's governments are accepting what's happening. They've seen enough to understand. This isn't a threat, it's an opportunity. The pup's glow pulsed in response, sending waves of pure potential through the growing network of evolved minds. Through their link, it shared the truth that was becoming clearer with each passing moment. The boundary between human and canine consciousness had always been an illusion. They were witnessing more than just an evolution. They were seeing the birth of a new way of being, where two species could share not just their lives, but their very essence. As afternoon approached, the transformation reached a new phase. The pup, glowing with an intensity that seemed to bend light itself, began sharing deeper visions through their mental network, glimpses of possibilities that even the evolved minds struggled to comprehend. It's not just communication anymore, Dr. Carter projected, her scientific understanding merging with newfound intuition. They're showing us what consciousness can become when species barriers fall completely. Through their shared awareness, Marcus and Sarah experienced what the pup was revealing, a future where human and canine abilities complemented each other perfectly. Human rational thought merging with canine instinct, human creativity flowing into canine loyalty, two kinds of intelligence becoming something greater than either could be alone. Atlas's ancient wisdom flowed through their connection. For centuries, we've been preparing for this. Every human who's ever looked into their dog's eyes and felt understood, every dog who's ever sensed their human's unspoken needs, they were glimpsing what we're becoming now. The global media continued broadcasting the phenomenon, but something unprecedented was happening to the reporters themselves. Those covering the story with German shepherds by their side found themselves awakening, their live reports becoming first-hand testimonies of transformation. Chen's thoughts carried a tone of amazement. The Pentagon's reporting similar occurrences at military bases worldwide. Every K9 unit, every police dog team, they're all changing. But it's controlled, peaceful. The pups are guiding the evolution perfectly. Sarah's maternal pride flowed through their link as she watched her offspring reshape the world. Through their connection, Marcus understood what made these pups special. They weren't just catalysts for change, they were guides, ensuring the transformation happened in harmony with both species' nature. The collective consciousness expanded, with each passing moment creating a tapestry of shared experience that transcended traditional boundaries. Humans and dogs were learning to see through each other's eyes, feel through each other's hearts, understand through each other's minds. This was evolution in its truest sense, not a competition for survival, but a journey toward unity. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across Central Park. The pup's glow had stabilized into a steady pulse that beat in perfect harmony with its sibling across the park. Through their expanded consciousness, Marcus and Sarah felt the transformation entering its final phase. The neural patterns are permanent now, Dr. Carter shared through their link, her excitement merging with scientific precision. Each evolved pair is creating unique pathways, but they're all connected to the whole. It's like a living network of shared consciousness. The world had stopped to witness this moment. Global leaders were calling for calm while experiencing the evolution themselves. Military commanders stood down their forces as their own K9 units guided them into the transformation. The change was no longer something to fear, it had become something to embrace. Through their mental connection, Sarah shared what she sensed. Her pups had completed their role as catalysts. The evolution would continue naturally now, spreading at a pace that both species could adapt to comfortably. Each new awakening would strengthen the network, each connection adding to the whole. Atlas's thoughts resonated with ancient understanding. This was always our destiny, not to rule over each other, but to evolve together. The pups haven't changed our nature, they've fulfilled it. The collective consciousness hummed with countless stories being shared, police officers experiencing their K9 partners' unwavering loyalty firsthand, military dogs sharing their handlers' strategic minds, family pets and owners discovering depths of love they'd never fully expressed before. Chen projected his observations across their network. The first children are beginning to evolve now, especially those who grew up with German shepherds. Their minds are so open, so ready for this change. They're showing us possibilities we never imagined. Marcus felt Sarah's fierce pride as they watched their pup standing tall, its small form containing power that had reshaped the world. Through their connection, he understood that this was more than just an evolutionary leap. It was the healing of an ancient separation between species. The transformation had become a bridge, connecting not just minds, but hearts across the boundaries that had divided them for so long. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, a fitting backdrop for the world's first day of shared consciousness. The pup, its glow now a gentle shimmer that matched the evening light, sat contentedly between Marcus and Sarah, their minds linked in perfect harmony with the growing network of evolved beings. Every continent has reported successful transformations, Chen shared through their connection. The evolution has found its own rhythm, spreading naturally through the bonds that already existed between humans and dogs. Dr. Carter's final readings flowed through their shared awareness. The change has become self-sustaining. Each new connection strengthens the whole, but in a way that preserves individual identity. We're not losing ourselves. We're expanding what self means. Through their mental link, Sarah shared her deepest feelings of fulfillment. Her pups had done more than survive. They had fulfilled a destiny written in the genetic memory of both species. The desperate mother who had scratched at Marcus's door in that snowstorm had become part of something eternal. Atlas's wise presence touched their minds one last time. This is not an ending, but a beginning. Each day will bring new discoveries as we learn what two species can accomplish together. And the vast network of consciousness rippled with stories of transformation. Rescue dogs sharing their handlers' strategic thinking during operations. Therapy dogs experiencing their patients' emotions directly. Family pets and children growing up with abilities that bridge the gap between species. Marcus felt Sarah's question through their bond. What now? The pups had fulfilled their role as catalysts, but their journey was far from over. The answer came through their shared vision of the future, a world where every partnership between human and dog carried the potential for deep connection, where the boundaries between species became doorways to greater understanding. As night fell over Central Park, the evolved beings began to move out into the city, each pair carrying the transformation with them. The pups would stay with Marcus and Sarah, not as weapons or experiments, but as family, living symbols of what becomes possible when fear gives way to trust. The blue glow that had marked their evolution faded into something subtler, a quiet radiance that reflected the permanent change in both species. They had become something new together, yet remained true to their essential natures. In the end, it wasn't just about dogs becoming more than dogs, or humans becoming more than human. It was about two species discovering that the deepest bond between them had always been a bridge to something greater. The story of Sarah, her pups, and the man who opened his door on that snowy night had become legend, not just a tale of survival, but a testament to the power of trust, love, and the courage to evolve together. As Marcus and Sarah walked home, through the transformed city, their pups trotting confidently beside them, they shared a single thought. Every ending is just another beginning, and their journey into this new world was only just starting. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.